Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Monday night broadcast. It's always so good to see you and to be here. I am Dia Dynasty, one half of La Maison de Rouge. And today we have the wonderful, beautiful, legendary Simone Justice. And here is Simone.
Hi.
Hello. So good to have you. Thank you for joining us. Looking stunning as usual.
Thank you.
So how are you today?
Good. I was excited to have this conversation with you. It's been a while since I've connected with you.
Yeah, it has been a while. I hope things are going well in your life. And, we're all kind of like, I guess, pandemic veterans at this point, right?
Well, I'm a pandemic veteran already because I have chronic illness. So for me, it hasn't been that much of a change.
Okay. Yeah. You just have to maybe like make everybody else stay away a little, more. So let's see. So Simone, in case any of you guys need an introduction, Simone Justice is a world-renowned dominatrix as well as a BDSM educator. She is a BDSM Hall of Famer and a DomCon board member, a Sublime Lady of Otherworld Kingdom, and mentor to many of the world's top dominatrices, as well as producer of kinky events, TV, and film, or BDSM consultant and writer. That's a lot of hats, but that's kind of the thing. Like women are really great at multitasking.
Yeah, it's interesting when I hear world renowned now, that's not such a big deal. Everybody's world renowned now.
Right? Well, thanks to the internet, I guess.
Right? It didn't used to be like that.
That's true. But like not everybody can claim that. Some people are still not world renowned. So did you wrap up DomCon already?
Yes, DomCon was over the weekend. Mm-hmm. We went virtual this year, and so it was a big change for everybody. And it was great because people who couldn't get out, to the hotel and pay for the flights and all of that it costs to go to the actual physical conference were able to join us. So it's something that we're going to look at continuing on.
Yeah.
And having some component of DomCon that is broadcast on the internet so that more people can join us that may not be able to go to the actual physical location.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that too. It does cost quite a bit of money, and you have to have the time, of course, to make it to the physical convention. Of course, for anybody that doesn't know about DomCon, it is the Dominatrix Convention, essentially. Yeah. And how many years has it been happening?
I think it's 17 now. So it started out being really focused on pro-domination, dominatrix, and it really now we're much more open to everybody. It's more inclusive of everyone. So it's called DomCon, but it's really for everybody in BDSM, people who are curious, people who are professional, people who do it for fun. It's very well-rounded, and our classes are also directed at everybody.
Yeah. So not just dominants, but submissives or switches or, kinksters and fetishists alike. Yeah. I definitely enjoyed my time there. And I think that the accessibility of the internet is definitely going to like help a lot of people learn and feel like they're getting like some very authoritative information and advice too.
Yeah, and there's always the pre-DomCon, the industry classes that are specifically for professional dominatrixes or dominants of any orientation. Those are before it opens to the public. So it still has that, but it's also adding in everything else. So
yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, I think it's great to, once things, I guess, like return to normal, to be able to have the streaming element too, so that you can still be so accessible. So let's start with the beginning of Simone's story. Maybe not the whole beginning, but can you tell us, Simone, about your very first kinky experience? Whether you knew it was kinky or not at the time.
Oh, I definitely knew.
Okay.
It was something that I sought out. So it was very much, it was something that I wanted to do, and I looked for it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was in my teens, and I sought out having partners that were interested in BDSM. So my very first experience was when I was about probably 17, I'm thinking, something like that. And it was just, bondage and spanking and experimenting and doing it in the bedroom. And I had awareness about BDSM, and it stayed in my personal life for a long time. So it was something that was always a part of my dating and my relationships.
Okay. How did you learn about it in the very beginning then?
From porn, not like we do now, have the internet, but we had magazines back then.
I remember those days.
So there was actual physical magazines, and I was looking at those things, and I saw some stuff in there. And the first thing that I saw, I think it was in We magazine, OUI, not W. And I think it was in that magazine. And that one was just a photo spread that had a dominance and submission element, where a woman was driving a sports car and she got pulled over by a police officer, and it just had that role play piece to it.
Yeah.
And I had been looking at Playboy and all kinds of stuff, and when I saw that, I got really excited about it. So that was kind of where it started for me, was just looking at those images and thinking about that power dynamic. And then there was another one called Wicked Wanda that was in Penthouse, and that was a cartoon, and there was this dominatrix type woman in it. And I thought she was amazing, called Wicked Wanda. So that was, I wanted to be Wicked Wanda. And lo and behold, I became basically Wicked Wanda when I grew up.
Yeah. I mean, how do you feel about the idea of like a woman like that being called wicked though?
Well, she was, because her character was very evil and manipulative, and, it was very, she liked to kill people, and it was a cartoon.
Right.
Cartoon. It was way over the top. So she really was actually wicked. But I think that was, also just the way that I was introduced to all of it was these, like, the bad characters. They always had black hair.
Yes.
I had blonde hair when I was young. So, but I wanted to have that black hair and be that bad character.
Yeah. I felt the same way. I was like, oh, I'm already that. So how did like, aside from all the things that you already knew when you first started engaging in kink, how has your sexuality evolved since then?
Yeah, I was young at that point, and I was trying things out, and I had a natural knack for it and an interest in it. And then I built my skills over the years and tried more of the different aspects of BDSM from top and bottom. And yeah, I'm very experimental. So really since then, I've become more outspoken, I think, maybe in a way, that I wasn't when I was really young, but yeah, it's been a progression of trying different things. Very much, I've always wanted to explore everything and try everything out. So I've done a lot of stuff.
So you're pretty adventurous.
Yes.
Have there been any surprising changes in the way things have gone? Like for example, if, finding out that when you first bottomed, like what that was like?
No, I don't think so. I think that it wasn't there. I knew about the things that I experienced. So it was more of an aspect of when I did get to really explore being submissive and bottoming and go on that journey. I had seen others and facilitated that. So, and I knew sort of what the milestones or road stops would be along the way. But to actually experience it yourself, there's indescribable elements of that. So I knew that there was going to be a moment when if it was pushed hard enough, that everything would change. The pain would change into pleasure.
Yeah.
But the actual experience of that was much more drastic than I thought it would be.
Oh, yeah, because it was embodied.
What was it?
Because it was happening in your body.
Yeah, it happens in your body, but
Not
the difference between the pain and the pleasure, it is it's just an edge. You fall over a cliff.
Oh.
So I think I expected it to be more gradual than it was.
Okay.
So if you're enduring a certain amount of pain for a while and it becomes excruciating, difficult, you're really struggling with it. And then that moment when it changes is really just, it's so drastic and so quick, and it happens, and then everything's different after that. So I think I expected it to be more gradual.
Right. Yeah.
Than it was. So maybe that was a surprise. It's a nice question to ask. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, that is actually really surprising to hear, because I'm not so sure that I've gotten to that edge, I guess. So I've definitely felt that sense of like relief and that subspaciness, that you get sometimes. But yeah, I guess maybe like a few more times and I'll be able to notice it happening.
Yeah, that was specifically, the subspace is more of a gradual, I think, for me feeling. But I was talking about just like the physical change of the endorphins, of that flying, of that high, runner's high, similar to runner's high. I've been a runner. I've experienced that as well. And it's very much the same kind of thing. But yeah, it was just very, it was a relief when it happened. Yeah. And quite shocking as to how quickly and dramatic that shift is. It's almost also too, it's like if you ever had any actual drugs, not just your own chemicals, same kind of deal. If you take a drug and it hits you, it's, you're suddenly in an altered state. So
yeah, I was actually just gonna liken it to like all those hormones like flooding in. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm sure you've gained a lot of insights, continuously. I know that you have a background in psychology. And so have there been any that were like beyond your scope of education that you've learned from like the evolution of your sexuality or your kink?
Yeah, so I think your question is about maybe where the training in psychology ended and kind of the BDSM sort of took over in that sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So, you don't really learn that much about it in psychology classes. I have a bachelor's in philosophy and then a master's in psychology. And then I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and I worked many years as a psychotherapist. So when you're really talking about all of that, it's very much focused on, and this is all coming, like, these are great questions. I'm having to think and come up with my answers because we didn't rehearse this. So I think one of the things is that psychology is really focused on trying to kind of fix things and heal you and get you out of any painful place. And it isn't very introspective or insightful into what that felt experience is like. And there is an emphasis on expressing your emotions and letting your emotions flow through you and valuing them. But it's sort of always with this agenda that you're supposed to move towards some kind of happiness or something. Whereas I think in, BDSM, when you get to really delve into the darkness and into the pain and into the areas where most people would try to get away from it, and kind of staying in that, you learn a lot more about, I think, what those things are like and the value of them that maybe isn't emphasized in all psychology. Some psychology does, but most psychology doesn't. So.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think also there have been a lot of new developments in trauma research in the more recent times, and I find that that what you're talking about in I guess like psychology or spiritual circles is kind of like shadow work. And I feel like that is kind of like a hot topic right now, where people are actually embracing BDSM as a means of healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love that that it's taken on, I guess, like a somewhat therapeutic context as well, and that people with like clinical psychology backgrounds can kind of talk about BDSM in a way that makes sense to more people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's been a lot of work in the psychology world to, and specifically by people in the BDSM community who worked very hard to change the thinking and to educate psychology. But, you know, there's still a lot of misunderstanding, and there's a lot of work to be done there to educate more about what BDSM is really about. So yeah, that's definitely a process. And I was more interested in the types of, the shadow work comes from Carl Jung. So I was interested in Jungian psychology. And I did study that. And I did also work as a trauma therapist and specialized in that. And so, yeah, there's just, I think there's a lot to be discovered still.
Yeah.
And also in BDSM, there's, you know, there isn't that much interest a lot of the times in delving into why or what is actually happening with people. I think people, you know, maybe because it has to do with some of the shame that's involved, where people just kind of, they want to go into it and get back out without really processing or talking or thinking about what is it that's happening and why. But see, that's where I'm always interested in, because philosophy, psychology, theory about why is something happening, what is actually happening here, and analyzing it, that's really interesting to me. So that's part of why I think when I teach BDSM, it's a little bit different than some other people, because I'm really focusing on that. Whereas I think other people are like, hey, how do you make it fun and good and do a good job at it? And then they're done. And I'm much more interested in, and I'm interested in that, but I'm also interested in a lot more of what's going on involved. So, but I think that in BDSM itself, in our world, there could be more discussion, more thinking about what's actually happening. And I think that that's very beneficial for people to maybe understand that although we're call it playing and BDSM is for fun and enjoyment, it's also a very impactful experience, and it could be a positive experience and it can be a negative experience, and it needs to be held with care and understanding.
Yes.
So I think that that's,
I'm so happy that you just said everything that you did, because it resonates so deeply with me and why I'm interested in BDSM and kind of like the possibilities and the potential of healing and caring. And I love that you have so much to say about it, you know, because a lot of people look up to you, and it's not all about, you know, like getting somebody off, even though pleasure is a huge conduit into that area of our lives that, you know, that sometimes we don't explore. So yeah, that's yes to everything you just said. So how long have you been dominatrixing?
long time. You know, personally, like I said, since my teenage years, long time ago. And then professionally, early 90s. So
okay,
it's been a while.
Yeah. Can you talk about the difference between what it was like back then when you started professionally and what it's like now?
Well, I think the thing that people experience now that's so different is the bar to entry. So in order to become a dominatrix in those days, you really had to, a lot of, actually, if you talk to the doms and hear from them, a lot of them were just kind of lucky and they sort of landed on it, or be like myself, and you had to pursue it. So it wasn't something that was so easy to find, and it wasn't so easy to call yourself a dominatrix or to be in that community and be, now it's just easy to just kind of, you know, create a Twitter account and poof, you're dominatrix. So it's quite different in that way. And some people think that that's great, and there's probably some good things about it. And then there's also some things that have been lost in that process. So I think that, you know, we were talking during DomCon about this a bit, and you know, back in the day when we were doing this before, there wasn't quite so much openness, and it was so secret and scary and dangerous, and people would get arrested and, you know, have all kinds of court cases and child custody. I mean, there was so much more of a risk of being involved in this than there is now, you know, and so much more judgment and people's families, you know, shunning them, or marriages breaking apart, all these kinds of things that I don't think there's as much risk now in being associated with BDSM. There still is, but it's not quite what it was. And then also it's so much easier to find it and to do it and to start and to say, hey, I'm a professional.
Yeah, that's very true. And I also think that even now more than ever, the risk is in being a sex worker more than like a dominatrix, because there's so much stigma against sex work, and when we lump ourselves into that category under the umbrella of sex work, it's a whole different story.
Yeah, I really am very sensitive about the internalized discrimination that exists in domination, professional domination, where people are looking down on sex workers or criticizing them. That really is something that I get really upset about. And it continues where there's some kind of judgment involved, you know, and these ideas about, oh, if you're a dominatrix, you don't do anything sexual or whatever. So, you know, things have changed over time. In the 70s, back in the day, there was an expectation of some kind of, you know, hand job or something in domination. And then in the 80s, 90s, it became something where, you know, we don't do sex. And then in the mid 2000s, there came more of a shift back again towards more people integrating the two together, and a change in porn where people actually including the two, because back in the day, in like the 90s, early 2000s, you couldn't and nobody would do having some kind of bondage and having penetration in the same video. So anyway, so things changed, and now people are judging and saying that that's not the way it's ridiculous. I think that that's something that we need to stop doing, is all of this division and this judgment in our community about what's the right thing to do. It reminds me when I was younger, I was into the punk rock thing, and there would be this judgment of like, that's not punk rock. You have to have short hair and you have to wear this. And I thought, aren't we in this, all of us in this, trying to create something together? And now we're having this kind of judgment inside of our group too about you have to be not punk rock enough. And it's the same thing with the, you know, and it's just that same thing coming up again. It's like, who are you to say what a dominatrix is supposed to do and not do, and where that line is and what it means? That's just something I really get upset about.
Yeah, I think that that's absolutely true. And, you know, it divides us more to have infighting also, or to be like, well, I'm better than you because I do this kind of sex work. And we just really need to get past that. And I wish like I had an answer. I just don't really know, because, you know, for us, for me specifically, like I think of sex as so many different things. I think like my favorite acronym for the word sex is sacred energy exchange. So like you don't necessarily even need to have penetration or genital stimulation to have sex, in my opinion. And I think that that dividing us it's almost like a certain type of consciousness where like somebody needs to feel better than somebody else by putting them down.
Yeah.
And we've got to get over that.
I think the answer to that is people actually meeting each other and talking and getting to see and know, you know, that you're talking about human beings. and not this kind of labeling and division that you're talking about, you know, and I think that that judgment can melt with that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is one of the reasons I think our broadcast helps, you know, like we're all about talking to different kinds of people and hearing stories and humanizing all of us also, because underneath all the layers and all the labels and all the colors and all the religions, we are human. And that is definitely the most important thing that we need to hold on to right now. So I'm curious how your career has evolved also, because I think, like, you know, all of us have kind of gone through the pandemic shift where we're doing things online. So how many other ways has your career shifted?
Well, I haven't been doing dominatrix sessions in a long time, but when I was doing sessions, the last few years when I was really taking sessions, they were all online. So I had moved to the phone and webcam and all of that online platform quite a while ago. And for us, the old school doms that have been around a long time, it's really not that big of a change, because back in the day, you would have clients flying in from everywhere, and then you would maintain some kind of relationship with them when they would go elsewhere. So we have had that practice of having these long distance exchanges, also just in the BDSM world. So I have had relationships with people that were dom sub relationships that were distant before. So to me, it wasn't a big shift at all. And I had changed over to that quite a while ago. So I was pretty practiced at that. So I was fortunate in being able to share with people some of what I had learned about that and teaching some classes on that. So that's been great. But I think your question was about evolution of my career as a dominatrix. And so I guess what happened when I had my own dungeon back in 98, 99, 2000, 2001, like right in the turn of the century there. I had my own place, and it was rather large, and I had started teaching other women how to do what I did. And then I opened it up to the community. And so doms from around Los Angeles, at that time my dungeon was in Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard, would come and to my classes. And since then, people have sought me out as somebody to teach them how to do professional domination or in their personal life. So I've been doing that for a long time, but I've doing more of that in the last few years and really focusing on that. And just really interested in keeping alive some of the things that that have been lost a bit in the last 15 years or so, when things have changed, where there was that just kind of shift in how people got into this. So some of that I like to keep passing that on. And also I'm always happy to share what I know and to learn from people who come to me as well to find out more about how to do all this stuff. So yeah. Love it.
Can you maybe name a couple of the things that you want to keep alive that you think are important in the world of professional domination or domination in general?
Yeah. I see the way that people play these days, and sometimes it looks and feels different than what my experience has been in the past. So some of the things that are sometimes missing is what we talked about earlier, is perhaps having an experience of being on the bottom. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be submissive or go through a process, but having this more understanding of what it's like on the other side. I find that a lot of people in it now, because they kind of jumped into it, they maybe haven't experimented with that. And I think that there's something that that's important about that. It's really important to know what you're doing to another person, because like I said, the felt experience of it, words can't necessarily describe for somebody what it is. And when you're doing that to somebody, you might want to know for yourself what that feels like. So that's one of the things that's changed quite a bit, that I like to encourage anybody who practices with me, is to do a session with somebody who's very skilled and experience it. And then also I think there has been a big shift in the way people play, where maybe this is also a reflection of the way that people come into it. They might have seen some kind, like I did, seen some porn or some cartoons or something, and maybe not been in a community where they're experiencing a longer version of what a session looks like. So, and when I say session, it doesn't necessarily mean professional. It could be a scene, could be just people playing. But I see people skip over a lot of parts that I think are important, and kind of not go through a slow warm up, or having kind of rushing to the showy stuff, maybe, you know, and skipping some of the more less shocking elements that are involved in domination. So like guiding a person into their subspace and coaching them through and helping them back out again. So, and sort of kind of cutting all that out and just going straight to the thing you might see in a video or in a photo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that's important.
I totally agree. There is an art to crafting a scene, and it's not about how sensational it is. And I totally agree with you about feeling everything that you're doing to somebody else. It was how I discovered that I don't actually like rope bondage or being suspended, and knowing
that's painful stuff.
It really is, especially if you have bones, bony bones. But yeah, it's always really good to, in my opinion, to experience what you're doing to somebody else. But I think that there's also a lot of times that stigma of like undermining your dominance, or, you know, how do you get around that?
I think that it is something that people, if you're doing this professionally and you want to kind of maintain an image, and understandably so, because some people who do have this, again, it's sort of this like cartoonish idea where they are imagining that, you know, that you're dominant all the time and you have to be all the time. And if you're not a dominant, and you can't possibly be a real one or a true one. And that's that misperception. It can actually be sort of harmful to your professional stature, when certain clients would be turned off if they knew about some of the things you were doing. But I think that, so keeping that private is important, maybe, in some ways. But I also really truly believe that you don't have to like it, but you should at least know what it feels like, you know, and just to have an experience of it. And like I said, you don't have to be super submissive or whatever, but at least bottom. And you don't have to, I can't handle certain things to the degree that I would give it to somebody else. So there's always been this kind of another way that people talk about, oh, you don't dish it out if you can't take it or something. I don't really believe that, because I love to give to somebody something that I couldn't receive, but at least I have some idea of what that's like, because I've had the softer version of it. Just because I can't maybe take it at level 11 doesn't mean that I don't have an understanding of what it is that I'm imparting to another person, right? So that's I think a myth. But yeah, I don't know if that was helpful to that.
No, that's actually really helpful. I recently came out as a switch, but it's, you know, not something that I do professionally. And I was kind of like, well, do I want to keep that private? You know, is that something that I should that I shouldn't share, that is going to undermine my dominance, or that people are going to turn away from or think less of me about? And then I decided, you know, like, if that is really how they think, maybe we're not aligned, you know? Like, I think that
I made the same decision. I thought, you know, because I have encountered people talking like that, and in the BDSM world. And so I thought, you know what, then I don't really want to play with that person. If they don't get it, if they have to have that kind of black and white version of what it's all about, I'm more interested in it as something that is fluid, and I'm more interested in all the different permeations and possibilities and all. I'm much more interested in that than I am in kind of what might be an intro version of it, or a really fantasy version. I'm more interested, I love fantasy, but I'm also interested in what's the reality of it. So maybe not the person for me to play with.
Yeah. I'm curious if there's like, can you paint a scene that maybe did happen
That maybe did happen.
That maybe did happen. You know, we don't know for sure. Like toward the beginning of your career that couldn't happen now?
That couldn't happen now?
Yeah. Like if there's any, I don't know. I mean, if there's anything that like is so different from when you were, no. anything can still happen.
I mean, there's some devices that have come out that didn't exist then. Like there's these awesome now, like, you know, through the internet, Bluetooth shock thing, you know, like I mean, people used to be amazed when I had my shock, like little remote that I used to use on my guys at parties and stuff. But now, you know, so yeah, there's some devices that exist now, but I don't think so.
Not
I mean,
really.
everything that we did then, we can do now, and vice versa. So,
and more remotely.
Yeah.
So do you think, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, so do you think that kink and BDSM are becoming more accepted in our culture or in popular media or, you know, in the world?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's definitely happening. It's definitely changing, but there's still a lot of judgment. So there's a long ways to go. But yeah, it's definitely changed quite a bit. You know, there's much more interest. There's much more acceptance. I mean, back when, you know, when I was working as a dominatrix, one of the reasons why we made so much money was because nobody else would do that stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, it was something where an escort wouldn't do it. A stripper wouldn't do it. Nobody's wife or girlfriend was going to do that because there was something crazy and wrong and sick about it. So that's completely changed. You know, now I teach classes to people that are, you know, couples that are interested and lots of people who are curious. So completely different environment, but still, you know, still not enough acceptance, and there will be. It's moving in that direction.
Yeah, ever so slowly. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you miss about real-time sessions? Yeah,
of course. I mean, I miss a lot of things about being a dominatrix, about playing in that realm. I mean, one of the things that was great, and one of the reasons why I became a professional dominatrix instead of just keeping it in my personal life, was the possibilities, the breadth and depth of the types of sessions you could do as a professional is so much more than when it's just in your personal life. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I had so much more experience playing on that level. So sometimes I miss some of the stuff I used to do. And, you know, I don't have a dungeon like I had before. So when I want to play, do certain things like suspension or something, I would have to go to a dungeon and rent a dungeon now. So yeah, there's a little bit of a difference there, but yeah, I don't, you know, it's all possible. Right. So I know people and I can do things. So I could do when people are talking about, do they want to play or something with me? And I was like, okay, what do you want to do? Because I've pretty much done it all and could probably do whatever type of scene you want to do. So there's, you know, we used to do just about everything that you do now, and maybe even more so. I don't know.
Yeah. I love the idea of like a really immersive scene that spans over a few days and begins with like an abduction and, you know, like taking somebody out into the woods and where they don't really know where they're going or where they are, and kind of, I don't know, that whole like that's a fantasy for me.
I've got to do that stuff. And then when I went to OWK, which you mentioned being a Sublime Lady of OWK, that was like basically the Disneyland of BDSM, of femdom. And it was like that, you know, the guys came into that realm, and you go in there and the gates close behind you, and they're huge, enormous gates, you know, it closes behind you. And then if you were, you know, a man who was, because there it's only femdom, it's only female dominant, that came into that, you know, they took all of their clothes and their wallet and everything. And then you'd go into a jail cell. So it's that experience, but you know, for real, it was fun. Yeah, it was fun. I had a jail cell in my dungeon too. I used to do that there as well. When you came in, you know, everything was taken and you're thrown in the jail cell. So yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
would you have like would there be a period of time when when you would just like leave them in the cell and like actually have them feel really, really lonely?
Oh,
like,
yeah, of course. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because you want to add that psychological element. Are they coming back? What's happening? That kind of thing. So sure, you lock somebody in there and then you just walk out and don't say anything. Leave.
Okay. I'm getting some really great ideas because I'm looking to build a femdom farm, and it's going to have elements of like an actual farm, but also OWK. Like every time I bring up the word femdom farm, people are like, oh, like other world kingdom, and I'm like, kinda, So there's a piece of property that I'm looking at, and it has a sugar shack. In the woods. Like you have to kind of walk for, like 20 minutes into the woods to find it. And it's just like a tiny little log shack with one window and a door. And I'm like, what would I do with this? Now I have the perfect idea.
Yeah, it's great to play also in nature outside. It's very different than playing in a dungeon. So that's beautiful too. If you have a space where you can play outside, I've had the pleasure of playing outside in lots of places around the world. And there's something about that that's so freeing, because you're outside and the sun is shining, or at night, or and you have that connection with nature, and it feels so different than being inside of a dungeon, which is like a cave. I mean, being a pro dom, you're in the dark and it's like cave all day long. I used to walk out of it'd be walk out of my dungeon and just the light would just hit my eye, like a vampire, because you're in there all day. So it's great when you can play outside. So that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I mean, all kinds of possibilities with natural elements like fire and isolation and burying water. Yeah, I'm super excited about that. I hope that you can come visit the femdom farm.
Oh, for sure. I would love to do that. That sounds really fun.
Awesome. Do you have any advice for, just quickly, the people out there that are looking to get into domination?
Yeah, I think it's, like I said, it's so much easier now. Now there's a bunch of books on it instead of just one. So, look at books, read about it. Go ahead onto FetLife, which is basically like Facebook for people who are into BDSM, and find out what events are happening in your area. But always, I say, go slow and start with groups, and don't do kind of jumping into something with a random person, because, danger factor, but also because you don't know what you like or what you want until you really have more of an understanding of what all the possibilities are. And I think that's a mistake that people make. They label themselves or what they're into too early and too quick, and then they get stuck in that. And, like my journey, like that, just, of trying so many different things and exploring and all, you find out if you open up to everything, you may find things that you are surprised that you are into or would like. So definitely look around and find some groups and go there and watch and see and learn before you jump in and make up your mind, because you might miss some stuff.
Yeah. That's really good advice. Not get too like trapped into the labels and titles and stuff like that. And I still see your sense of like effervescent curiosity, like every time I talk to you. So I think that that's really important, and it keeps you like curious and young.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes. So I have two little kind of like fun questions.
Okay.
First is, what are your vices and your virtues?
My vices. What do you consider? What does that mean? A vice for you?
A vice is something that is kind of like maybe a bad habit that's hard to.
Oh, I know what it means. I just meant for you, because in our world, it's kind of hard to, to define.
Right. For me, it's actually like a bit of a sugar addiction, which I've had to, like really, really monitor. I love sugar and anything sweet that is, especially like pastries. And I know they're not good for me. I'm gluten intolerant. sugar is not good for, you know, my general health, but it's really hard to resist.
Yeah, I don't, I used to smoke, you know, I used to do drugs. I mean, I used to drink, but I don't do so many of those kinds of indulgences anymore, because of my chronic illness, and also just getting kind of growing up and not wanting to do that stuff anymore. So I'm not really, it's not easy for me to come up with a vice, because if that's how I classically would look at a vice, it would be those types of things that pop into my head. So I guess if I had thought about it beforehand, I might be able to come up with something, but yeah, I'm not sure. I've had
100% virtuous.
probably, yeah. Not boring, I know, but yeah.
Not at all. Okay. So, and then my second question is, do you know your, so most people know their sign, which is the sun sign.
Yeah.
And then do you know your sun, or, I mean, your moon and your rising sign?
I think they're all Aries.
Whoa, that's a lot of fire.
Yeah.
Okay. You're a Aries sun, moon, and rising.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well,
I remember when I had an astrologer do my chart, that they were very surprised at how Aries I was.
That's awesome. That's also very unique, but you're kind of like a triple Aries.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think so.
Cool. So I think now would be a time to allow our audience to ask any questions that they might have.
Yeah, I love questions.
Yes.
I love questions, and your questions are great. I'm not sure my answers are the most interesting part, but I love questions.
I have been definitely like absorbing everything that you say.
All right, let's bring on the questions.
Yes, bring on the questions. And then
question. I'm always before my classes, in the middle, during questions, bring them. I love it, because I love to find out kind of what people are thinking about, and then I'm always surprised if I actually have an answer.
I remember when you taught a DomCon class called Mistress versus Goddess.
Yeah.
And the questions that came from that, especially ones that you asked, actually, I thought were really interesting, because I'd never really heard anybody kind of break things into that dichotomy. So
yeah, I think that you know, that's another thing with the changes of stuff. It's like I said, I think people get stuck more into you know, and even if they're professional for a long time or playing in BDSM for a long time, there's not quite the breadth that we used, because back in the day we did everything, right? So we experienced everything, we kind of knew it all, and we had this like big range. And I think now people jump into it and they get a smaller version of everything, and they don't necessarily know all that kind of stuff. So it was a pleasure to teach that class, and I'm glad that people were interested in those elements. But there's, you know, not one version of a dominant. You know, there's so many different kinds. And so that's what that class was about. So I went on one side and I did the same scene with two different people, and I did it as a goddess and I did it as a dominatrix. And then I just walked back and forth and switched and did like, okay, I did the same exact version of the same exact scene, but I just played it with different persona. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was a fun class.
Yeah. And there were, you know, like a lot of my friends were in that class. And I think that it really opened up a lot of channels of kind of like doing one thing in different ways for a lot of us too. So that was definitely enjoyable.
Yeah. Okay, questions.
Yeah, questions. Like, is anybody gonna ask any questions? We've got a bunch of thank yous.
That's nice.
So
thank you to everybody who's here.
Greg H says, "Thank you, Miss Justice, for all of you've done and continue to do for the kink community." And thank you, legendary Mr. Simone, BDSMpedia.
I know who that is.
Here we go. Would you be able to speak to how your eroticism informs your spirituality?
For me, those two things are not so separate. I think that for me, spirituality, I'm an atheist, and I've also I've studied a lot of different religions, And the thing that's the closest to something that I could say would be my religion, but it isn't a religion, it's a philosophy, is Buddhism. And so really for me, what's spiritual is being present, being very much embodied and here and now, and valuing that and having gratitude for it. So that to me is spirituality. And then eroticism for me is the same, you know, and that's one of the things that that's so important to me, and that I try to help people to do, is when you're playing is also to be present, to be embodied, to be in the moment, to be experiencing, rather than trying to play out a script or rush through a bunch of things you think might look interesting or somebody might like off of a list, is being very much present and experiencing together a journey that is something unique in the moment that will never happen again, and that is felt by both people fully, as fully as possible. So that to me, those two things are very much the same. So, you know, that kind of like SM, sadomasochism, we used to call it SM, you know, now it's called BDSM, but when I started out it was SM. You know, also is sometimes described as sex magic as well. So that there is this, to me, spiritual element of eroticism, of being present, and being present could be a part of yourself that is, you know, a dominatrix, or it could be a part of yourself that is a submissive. And yet that is only a conduit toward the totality of yourself, right? That all of you is being expressed in only one facet in the moment, but to bring all of you to that. That to me is eroticism and spirituality. That is the same thing.
Yeah, that is such a great answer, and also a really great question. Thank you, Violet of the Night. Let's see, we've got another question. I heard you on a recent podcast episode. Do you still do hypnosis sessions online?
I haven't been doing any sessions, but yes, when I was doing Night Flirt and Sex Panther, and if I do, which I kind of think I might at some point again. So if you watch my Twitter or my Instagram, I'll announce if I'm doing sessions. I might just do like a pop-up store, like, okay, I'm doing sessions right now, because I have a kind of an itch to do that. I love hypnosis, erotic hypnosis, and yeah, so thanks for listening to that podcast. That was a really fun thing where I just hypnotized some guy that I didn't even know, and just kind of, it was just winging it like this. I like to wing it. It's fun.
So for everybody else, the podcast was Other People's Lives.
Yeah. Oh, you know that. Okay.
Yeah, so that sounds really fun. I was actually thinking about your other class at DomCon, which was the erotic hypnosis.
Okay, I did that. I did it. Yeah, I do teach an erotic hypnosis class as well. I just barely touch on it though in that class, because that is something that takes a long time. I do have people that take phone classes with me and learn how to do erotic hypnosis, and you can't do it in one session. It's a learned skill that there's quite a lot going on with that. So it's
right.
But when I do that, yeah, sometimes I'll teach a class and teach just a few things. So.
Can I ask what the major differences between erotic hypnosis and like therapeutic Ericksonian hypnosis are?
Well, it's the same, you know, you don't want to be sexual with your clients, right? So when you're doing any kind of like hypnosis with somebody in a clinical context, just as you would with any sort of clinical interaction, you know, your boundaries are very clear around that.
Right.
So yeah, but in an erotic hypnosis, you hypnotize somebody doing the same kinds of things, and then you do some stuff that might be sexy or fun. So the person might have a fantasy, and sometimes the fantasies are things that are not actually possible, like actually transforming somebody into, you know, another gender and back again, or, you know, some kind of outlandish or fantastical situation. And during the hypnosis, you weave in your fantasies as well. So it's really fun.
Okay. I definitely have a lot more practice to do with that. But yeah, I love the idea of hypnosis and how easy it is to do it through virtual spaces and stuff like on the phone. And
it's even better because you're removing the visual aspect. So, and that's when I taught my distance domination class. I was talking to everybody about realizing that the change in medium, the change in the platform, that there's actual benefits to each of them. Instead of saying, oh, what do we do in person? Because, oh, you can't touch them. Well, great, you can't touch them, right? So now what's great about it? So on the phone, that's perfect for hypnosis because you're removing all of that, those aspects and going straight into their mind, right through your voice into their head. So
Yeah.
you're more impactful that way. Yeah,
You're using your mind, your voice to penetrate.
Yeah.
And that is very sexual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
I love when I play with somebody, I like to get into their head and then completely direct and control and navigate and then release them and have them say, what just happened? I love it.
I love it too.
And then, yeah, that's what I like to do.
A little mind fuck.
That too. I like to do that too.
Yeah. Let's see. We've got another question here. You talked about edge that transformed pleasure to pain. How to handle this situation from sub and dom?
How to handle it, meaning how to invoke that in somebody, or what was that? When you mean handle, what's exactly are you getting at there? Do you think you have a take on that question?
Koyo, can you clarify, please?
Mm-hmm. Mind hacking. Yeah, that's cute.
Yeah.
So in that edge, what I was talking about was when I was the first time or few times that I had experienced what it's like when you overwhelm a person's body with input, with sensory input, and how it becomes, if you do it properly, if you go slowly and build your way up, and the person is taking in and absorbing and experiencing more and more sensory experience to the point where it then overwhelms your body and your body responds with, endorphins and giving you this release from that edge. What I meant is it's like there's just a switch that goes off, so specific to like the first time I'm thinking about, or maybe, I don't know if it was the first or second, but one of those first few times was when I was getting flogged. And so the flogger, it started off nice and all that, got harsher and harsher. And then it got to where the tails of the flogger were just like cutting into me. And it felt like it was scratching and scraping and hurting and hurting and hurting and hurting. And I almost didn't think I could handle it. And that's where you need to go. If you want to handle it in the sense of how do you get somebody there, or how do you process it from the bottom part, is you need to push beyond that part where you think you really can't handle it.
Right.
That's when your body is going to then handle it for you, right, and dump chemicals into you, and you're suddenly going to go into an altered state. So
right.
That's what I'm talking about.
So to clarify, Koyo said how to
know. Well, if a person is tuned into you and watching, they will be noticing that.
Right.
Because it's not just something that's inside of you and it's not expressed. Right, your whole body will shift. When you're playing with somebody, you can watch them move over into these spaces. And that's one of the things I do when I teach people about BDSM, and I'm in person with them. I just did a class last weekend where a woman came to visit me, and I showed her, okay, look, watch him. You can see the difference. So you learn and you see the differences in when somebody is transformed into those places, and you can see the physical signs of all of it, the way they sound, the way they move, their energy, the way they look, all of that in their eyes. There's a dramatic shift. Mm-hmm. So somebody would be able to, hopefully, if they're putting you in that state, they're experienced enough to know what it looks like as you move up to it and what it looks like when you're in it. If not, may not want to do it with that person, unless it's like a lover and you're just both on the same journey and there's a lot of tender care around it. You probably want to play with somebody who knows how they can see it. So you don't really have to tell somebody.
I would also add that it takes a build up, and it's not something that happens immediately.
Yeah, no, and that's the problem too. When I was saying before, when people don't play slow enough, they ruin it. Because if you hit somebody too hard, too fast, too early, if there's a gradient that's just right, it's actually ruined. You've actually spoiled that whole possibility.
Yeah. So Koyo said that edge happened to me, and I tried to tell the mistress, but she thought I'm enjoying. So maybe you're talking about a limit, and not so much an
Oh,
edge.
okay. Yeah, that could be a language situation. So yeah, if there's a limit, then definitely you need to have some kind of, safe word system set up. Stoplight system is most common and very easily understandable. Almost everybody knows what that means without explanation of red, red, yellow, green. So yeah, or you have to have a sign, safe sign. So you do something physical. So yeah, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry that happened to you, that you weren't heard in that moment when you're trying to convey, hey, this is too much for me.
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely using safe words or safe signals is how you signal to the top that you cannot take it anymore.
Yeah. So I see somebody saying, what advice would I give my younger Dom self just starting out? I think just to know that that there wasn't some kind of something that I didn't know. It was like a lack of confidence, when I was starting out. And I think another aspect would be, to trust more than I knew what I was doing, because I did know more than I thought I did at that time. And I think also be the other thing that I would say to me then, I don't know. My thoughts just go to something else, which is just to cherish the people that are gone, that were there then. That's really what I think about. When I think back to those days, it's that, so many of those people are gone now. So, if I could go back there, I would spend more time with those people that were more experienced than myself, not so much just to learn or for the Dom thing, but just to be in their presence, to be with those people. That's where my mind was going. What was hard for me to talk.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that I could have had more confidence. So, and that's what I try to younger Doms have now too, is more confidence in themselves, and to say, I don't like, there seems to be this thing where older Doms or more experienced Doms kind of discourage or criticize, or people are worried that, that they don't know what they're doing or something. I don't think that there's some great mystery to BDSM. It's pretty easy stuff, and my concern is always just be safe. That's the most important stuff that people need to know. And then, as a Dom, know that you're in this position because somebody wanted you to be there. So have some confidence in that, and know that you're probably doing the right thing with that person, and don't be so worried about it.
Yeah. And I would also say, confidence is really helpful in staying centered and grounded in yourself and who you are, rather than playing that role of the cartoon dominatrix, which sometimes people can overcompensate their persona in ways that are actually harmful. And so staying connected with who you are and what you want and how you dominatrix is having the confidence to be who that is.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Thank you for saying that.
Okay. A couple more questions and then we're going to need to wrap it up.
I would never tell anybody who I played with.
Right. I'm not going to put that question up.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's why I didn't think that it was good ethics to put it up.
Okay.
So do you experience top drop? What causes it? And as a sub, how can I help my Dom with that?
Oh, well, you need to ask your Dom, because everybody's different. So whatever that person needs. And if they don't know what they need, then have some experimentation with them, and try some different stuff out and find out together what they need. But, I can't tell you what that person needs. But yes, of course, I have experienced it. For me, I used to go to play parties, and I always would say that I was going to leave early. Now I know better, because it doesn't happen. I get into playing and I'll play, and I stay up really late, and it'd be 4 o'clock in the morning, and I would be going home, and suddenly I would just get so tired. I was going to fall asleep, just really immensely tired. And I think it's just when you're performing and you're doing, we're doing this interview right now, and I'm not really nervous, but I am putting out a certain amount of energy, and my body is kind of a little bit stressed on some level, right? Because I'm having this conversation. And then at the end of it, there's going to be the lack of that. And then also the rush of chemicals that come in to compensate for that. And so you have a kind of like a basically it's like an adrenaline after like a hangover.
Yeah.
Right? So if I was playing all night long, you know, you have a chemical drop that happens. That's pretty intense. So there's certain things that people look for, and that would be anything where basically you're taking care of another person. So like maybe making them warm and getting them something to eat and being soft and gentle with them. But I don't know your dom. Maybe your dom doesn't want that stuff. So you'll have to ask them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, one more question, and this will be the last one. Are you planning to have a general BDSM training involve both dom and sub to promote confidence and connection?
No, I don't have a plan for that. I did have a class I was going to teach that was on connection. So maybe I'll circle back to that again. It was connection-focused domination. Because I do, as I think something I'd mentioned before, as I see this kind of disconnect between people when they play. And I love when I see the connection between people who are playing. That to me is beautiful and amazing. And so I wanted to kind of help people to maybe find some ways that they could get to that space. You know, I've seen some scenes that just, you know, have made me cry and be so honored to be in the presence of it. So that's the kind of stuff I love to do and I like to see and I like to help people achieve. So yeah, I probably could do something like that if people were interested. But I don't know about a general class for DOMs and subs. I usually would focus probably on one or the other, but maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's lots of possibilities for classes. So.
Yes, and if you guys aren't familiar, I've got Simone's information scrolling down here, where you can find her on her website, on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Facebook. And Simone has a lot of different types of classes available through Zoom. And you know, like I've definitely attended quite a few classes, and Simone speaks very clearly as she does here. So there's no like fuddlingness, you know, it's very organized, it's very succinct, and it's extremely packed with information.
I like to be very organized and try to give as much info as I can. And yeah, so that's my style. I'll go fast.
Yeah, you do. You got really like, rah.
There's a lot to, you know, every topic. People used to be surprised when I had a woman come to me a long time back and I was going to teach her a foot session on how to do foot fetish. And I said, okay, so it's a 4-hour class. 4 hours? And then of course we didn't even get to all of it, you know?
Wow.
So I guess having had kind of like the time and experience and being such an analytical person, I have a lot to say on any aspect of play, you know, and like I said before, the most important thing is safety, but there is so much to learn and to know about any and everything that's in BDSM. So yeah, the class has a lot of info.
Yeah, and that's why your educational voice is so valuable, is because like you really cover a lot of bases, and especially with your academic background, you know, you really can kind of like get deeper into it and talk about the psychological and the spiritual and the emotional and all of this. So that's why it's so rich with information. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. You are a very valuable person in the BDSM community, in my opinion. And, you know, like not to like say anything about your age, but I would consider you an elder of this community.
I am. I don't know. I don't think there's any DOMs that are older than me that I know in the United States.
All right. And so that's why it's so valuable to have
maybe two popped in my mind right there. So
in the United States?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's only a couple. Most of people from my time when I started out are no longer here, or they're younger than me. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's wrap this up. Simone, is there anything that you would like to say to our audience?
Yeah, I guess I would just like to say that we're getting through this time together, and we're co-creating what it's going to look like when we come back into being present with each other, more physically present with each other. And, you know, let's see what happens if we take this time away to be something that could be a growth experience for us. And thank you for being in this moment and sharing in this way, and being curious about me or this topic. And let's see what we can do together in the future to keep connecting in an even more interesting and exciting ways.
Absolutely. Thank you again for being here, for being you, for answering so many questions and giving us so much information about yourself. And so I just wanted to scroll the Patreon information for La Maison de Rouge. If anybody is interested in subscribing to our Patreon, we reward you with live video chats every month, and also a sub task, which is usually something about self-care.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it's like forced self-care. So thank you, lovely, lovely audience members. You guys have been really great in all your, very respectful and thoughtful questions. And
no, Mrs. Troy's not older.
Oh.
Neither one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all good. No, so hopefully again, we'll see you guys again next week. Mistress Lucy will be on with another wonderful guest. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. I'm going to end this broadcast, and Simone, you're welcome to stay on if you would like to just kind of, like say goodbye real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So
bye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.